welcome to Friday on the Pagan Perspective. It's Subs Week, and I'm Yeka. This week we are talking about creation and a little bit about bringing one's atheistic or more scientific views into this practice. So the question, and I'm going to be reading above your head, sorry here, is from Freestyle Skiing 24, and they wrote in, I have been very interested in the ways of Wicca/Neo-Paganism views the moment of creation. I have been studying Wicca, not in too much depth because of school, and I've been very curious on this topic. Before I started studying Wicca, I was an atheist, and feel like I bring a lot of atheist/scientific perspective into the way I study Wicca. For example, magic and quantum physics/mechanics. At this point, I still believe in the Big Bang and an event that happened before it. So I was just wondering what your views on the moment of creation are. Well, when I first read this topic, I was excited about it, and I still am excited about it. I've been really thinking about how to even begin addressing this, because it's actually a really large topic. And I went into thinking about, okay, so piecing together what do I believe, and then thinking about the difference between belief and feel, and then different types of belief. Why do I believe it? I'm taking the authority of someone. Am I rationing it out? All of that. So I decided how I would start is telling you about what I understand to be sort of the consensus or the general idea of what's going on in the current consensus in cosmology, and why I believe that. Now, I had to think about why I believe it, and I believe there are different types of ways that we know things, and one of the ways is by authority. And I don't mean that as, I know there's a lot of folks watching this that probably that's a big trigger word, but authority is one of the ways that we know things, or we believe or have knowing. There's a lot of things that we simply don't have the time in our lives to figure out and work through for ourselves. We believe things because someone told us them. We believe in DNA. How many of us have seen DNA? Not many of us have seen DNA. How about cell theory? I mean, until a few years ago, I'd never seen my own cells. I'd never seen cells. And, now I've seen them. I've seen my cheek cells and blood cells, and I've seen, plant cells, and I believe in them because of that. But for a very long time, I took the words of people who had studied it. And when it comes to cosmology, when it comes to creation, I kind of have the same attitude. I go, well, you know what? It's a huge topic, and I might have some basic understandings on things like thermodynamics and weak and strong force and all of those sorts of things. But I trust that there are people with rigor who have really dedicated themselves to trying to understand these things. And so I'm okay with taking their word on it. I'm also okay with taking people's words on why engines work or things like that. Now, we also have other types of knowledge that we know things because we have observed it, because we have personally watched that every time you drop the tomato, it's going to fall, and we know that. Now, I know from listening to authority that happens because of gravity. So there's different sorts of knowledge there. Now, I know that I'm starting to make this video a lot longer than I intended already, so I'll skip to what I think about or what I believe are my understandings of what happened in the beginning. Now, the problem with the beginning is that we don't know. And then, as some of the previous hosts have talked about, well, what came before that? So talking about a beginning, we can say whether it was a deity that created it. Well, where did that deity come from? Everything existed in a hot, dense state. Well, where did everything come from? So when I start to think about that, my head literally starts to hurt. And I've kind of come to accept that, well, I'm just one little, very short-lived piece of the earth walking around for a little while. Something that I know tremendous amount about things, but I know I know very little of what there is to know, and I don't know how I would ever know how it began. I'm rambling here now, but so we think that about 14.5 billion years ago, the Big Bang, and that name was coined as a way of making fun of the theory, but it sort of stuck. It's more the big expansion. But anyways, everything started expanding, and there's some really interesting stories about how people decided that that's probably what was going to happen. At that point, most matter was hydrogen and helium. Through the process of stars, we ended up getting heavier, denser materials, and about 5 billion years ago, a supernova happened, which created our solar system, which is where I consider and really look at the beginning for us, because that's when our solar system, the beginning of our planet, really started. And I'm very Earth-centric. I think most folks here are probably pretty Earth-centric too. But so 4.5 billion years ago, more or less, our planet, was basically molten at that point. It's still, there's still quite a bit of molten in it, but it was a big sphere, molten material. Not so long after, probably 40, 50 million years is the estimate, a planetoid, so a big planet basically, that was also molten, smashed into Earth. Her name was Thea, and in that collision, the moon was formed. Then after that point, many meteorites came to Earth carrying water and probably proto-amino acids, which might be where we come from. But about starting 3.5–4 billion years ago, our ancestors, who at the time were tiny bacteria, started to emerge. And we keep going through the movement of the plates and the atmosphere changing. That changed based on geological processes, but also processes that the cyanobacteria kick-started with the oxygen, and we went through many different climatic changes, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm going through it way too fast, but basically here we are today. So, but it's actually kind of cool to think that those were our ancestors. We think about ourselves as, or we believe they were, as just these humans, right? We're humans, and our ancestors were our parents, and were our grandmothers and their grandmothers, and et cetera, et cetera. And then sometimes we think of the primates who weren't quite human yet. But before that, we were other mammals, and before that, before we were animals, we were, other, and we go all the way back until these tiny single cells, and probably before cells. Who knows? We don't. So, that's sort of what I view. That's how I see it. And I look forward to the new discoveries and the new ways of understanding that will undoubtedly happen, that will help us to refine that theory and change those theories and put them together in different ways. And that's one of the really exciting things about science, is that it keeps changing, and we keep understanding it, and new people contribute different things, etc. And now, I, of course, consider myself a pagan, being on this channel. And I'm not a theist, as I've talked about before, and so I don't see, I don't think about creation in those terms. I enjoy the stories. I mean, on Wednesday, Brendan talking about the his traditions creation story just really was exciting to me, and I got really into it. And I think that humans, we think and tell and understand things through metaphors and stories, and so they're very powerful. But I don't see why there would have to be a conflict between the two. Why those things can't coexist. Now, for me and my beliefs, my practices, I don't use deities, but I don't have a problem with other people doing it. Let me keep moving on in this question, though. In terms of magic and quantum physics or quantum mechanics, I don't really have any background in that. You know, I have some basic physics background, but not really past that. So it's not something I can comment too much on. Yeah, I hope that sort of covers this. And all right.